that was recorded, really quick, with a guy named Dave. Oh, what was his last name? This is terrible. Dave. I can see you. You're bald, you're like me.
Yeah.
Dave. Oh, what was his last name? Anyways, sorry, Dave. I can't remember your name. Your last
Yep.
name. Been too long.
I'm very excited myself to go down these rabbit holes with you. So I'm good if you are.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is another episode of the Scoped Exposure podcast. Please welcome the most in shape vegan in the hardcore game, Jeremy from Comeback Kid. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today.
No. You're wrong. You're wrong. But thanks for having me. I think John Joseph, who's much older, is in way better shape than I am.
Well, I guess like for people that I know, so
Fair enough.
shout out to John. Jeremy, I'm sure there's probably only one person who's tuned in who doesn't know who you are, but can you give a proper introduction of who you are, what bands you're a part of, and where you're based?
Yeah, so I'm based in Winnipeg. I guess the band that I'm most known for would be Comeback Kid. I've played in a few other bands like Figure Four Officer Down and other local bands if you're old and we're around here. But yeah, Comeback Kid's kind of the one that you would know. I play guitar. We started the band in 2000. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want a brief history or you got that?
We'll definitely get into that.
Sure.
Before we get too into the subject matter, got to do the bev check to kind of set things off. It's just after 11 here, and I've had my morning coffee, but I just made like a chai tea latte with oat milk, and that's my way of getting a little bit more caffeine to start my day without having the shakes. So, what do
Very
you,
nice.
what do you
Health,
have?
healthy and important. Well, with being as cheesy as possible, in my fine Comeback Kid mug,
I didn't
I'm
even think that that was a possibility that would hit the show.
yeah. Well, when you told me, you do a Bev check, I was like, well, I at least got to put it in this just
Yeah.
to make things as goofy as possible here on my end. But yeah, no, I just aeropressed myself a coffee before this Zoom meeting podcast.
Yeah, very
I've
exciting.
already had one this morning as well, so I'm this may not help with my jitters, but and I
um,
thought I'd also show I do the Four Sigmatic thing, and this has lion's mane, which is supposed to help with my brain.
oh,
I don't
interesting.
know if it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if it does, but I bought 16 of these because I'm also one of those frugal Mennonites who, like, when something goes on sale, I go nuts.
Right.
So I had a 40% off code, and I was like, I'm just going to buy a box of them. So I bought 16 of them, even though I couldn't really afford it. I was like, I'm going to buy coffee down the road anyway. So it's a bit of an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. I never even thought that talks of Mennonite culture and things like that would even hit this hardcore podcast in its lifetime. But I
Yeah.
do remember when I was in high school, I Googled I had an article that was like top 100 Mennonite names, and I was
Yeah.
looking through. I'm like, this is literally like my graduating class.
Right.
The
Manitoba.
Newfields, the
Oh yeah.
Hieberts, the Ends, all of that.
Oh yeah. It's brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal.
But obviously, we're not here to talk Mennonite culture and last
I am.
names. Jeremy is, yeah, I am very excited for this podcast. There was actually an unreleased podcast episode when we first were setting things up many months ago. The episode didn't get released, but I actually was like, I'm not saying this just because you're on the podcast here. You were a guest that I've always wanted to have on here, just as far as being a fan of Comeback Kid, being from Winnipeg, and just some of the having that higher sense of establishment in the scene, and being a little bit of a
Well, you're setting the
wiser.
bar really high for me. I don't know if I can deliver, but I'll try.
Well, Jeremy, the way that we intro all these podcasts is just getting a little bit of context about how each of my guests came into the hardcore space. So we're gonna go way back in time. Tell me kind of those formative records, moments for you that discovered heavier music, and what put you on the path to being kind of in the ecosystem that you're on?
Right. Well, I guess I have to start off by saying I did not come in to the scene being a cool kid at all. Like I said, Mennonite, not anymore by faith, but my culture, my background, that lingers. The frugalness, the I don't know. There's certain characteristics, but that's not a rabbit hole we'll go too far down.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I grew up in a super conservative Christian community, and I was not allowed to listen to rock and roll, any of that. But I remember probably, I don't know how old I was, 5 or 6, like, and I was born in '76, so early '80s. I remember just hearing that electric guitar, not on anything, punk or hardcore or anything like that, but that did something, and it's just never left my system. So while going through my early teens, I was not allowed to listen to this kind of music. I always found a way to get my hands on some of it, and I always, I was trying to be compliant to a degree. So it was always going to be Christian music that I was listening to, but it had to be, I needed fast, I needed heavy. So, anyways, I started, buying some records that I wasn't allowed to have. And I kind of got into the whole heavy thing by being involved with metal, so thrash metal like Tourniquet, Vengeance Rising, Deliverance bands. Most people would not have any clue who they are, but that got me started. And then I moved to Winnipeg when I was 18, and yeah, just kind of started going to shows, wanted to be in a band, and had to make that happen. So yeah, I started meeting people, and yeah, the Royal Albert Arms was kind of like a hub for that at the time, and yeah, just kind of got connected there.
Yeah, and I literally was on a video shoot yesterday that and it just came up in conversation on like just the small town and not really having things to do, and especially in the prairies where you can't go out to like being in Calgary now I can go out to the mountains in 45 minutes, but in Winnipeg there's not a whole lot to do even in the summer months, so you kind of have to make your own fun. So thinking of like the small town scenes that really had you know like multiple hundred plus people at shows, whether that was in Winkler or Riverton or Selkirk or Steinbach. So yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about how some of those small towns, even like places like Dauphin, where Means and some of those bands kind of came up through the scene there.
Portage La Prairie,
Portage the Prairie, yeah.
Propaganda, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah, my when I played in a melodic hardcore band and had a drummer from Portage La Prairie, and he would tell me so many stories of shows from out there, and it's like now it's just a town where if I'm going from Winnipeg anywhere west, it's like that's just the first stop in the road.
Right.
Um, so the origins of Comeback Kid, you guys have been banned for a long, long time, and something I wanted to talk about. Just it's a selfish thing for me. When I did my 1 year of college, there was a 1 week intensive recording class with John Paul Peters from Private Ear Recording in Winnipeg, and he was telling me about just how he got into the mix of things. And he was talking about his very first recording experience and how daunting of a task that was, and then revealed that it was your guys' first record, Turn It Around. And
Oh yeah.
it was like I was the only hardcore kid in the room, and like my attention was immediately captivated as soon as he started, mention Comeback Kid. So, maybe talk about that recording process, the first kind of debut of what you guys wanted to sound like, and how that came into the picture.
Yeah, that first record was recorded in a guy's basement. His name was Colin Hanson, and him and John Paul started working together. I think probably around 2001 or 2002. Oh, I have a little visitor here.
Oh.
I might have to just so I might have to switch rooms just so I can.
Oh, you're all good.
She's up from a nap, so she's got to come say hi to Dad.
Yeah, she eating a pancake or something of that nature.
A wrap.
A wrap.
Sorry, I'm just give me 1 minute. I'm just gonna scoot on upstairs.
Yeah, no worries.
The nap is over. If I can do this carrying my coffee and
wow.
Yeah, multitasker.
More than just a riff doctor.
Yeah. Dadding, coffee, drinking, zooming. Yeah. So with that record, I think we started recording it at the end of 2002. I'm just going up my stairs into the
I
office.
appreciate you storytelling while we're transitioning versus having to hard cut.
um, yeah, we started recording that here. Do I need light? Here, maybe I should. Oh, that's not plugged in, of course. Let me just get my whole fancy studio set up here.
You're all good. This is like the very DIY version of Cribs in the chair.
Yeah. Here's my guitars that I record with sometimes. Recording. Yeah. So 2002, we started writing that because we put. Well, no, I should back up a bit because we put out a demo in 2001. That was recorded, really quick, with a guy named Dave. Oh, what was his last name? This is terrible. Dave. I can see you. You're bald, like me. Dave. Oh, what was his last name? Anyways, sorry, Dave. I can't remember your name. Your last name. Been too long. Yeah. So a lot of those songs that we had on the demo ended up being on the full length, maybe minus one of those. I can't remember exactly, but we wrote more. And at that time, John Paul just seemed like the logical guy to record with because he's one of those that if you know him, he's always trying to better himself. He's always like when it comes to recording, like, if there's something he doesn't understand, someone like me might get intimidated and be like, yeah, I'm just not going to do it. He wants to figure it out. He wants to get under the hood and figure it out. So, and I was also in a band with him. I think we might have been done at that time, called Officer Down. So I obviously had firsthand knowledge of, smart guy. Let's do this with him.
Right.
So we just went there, and in Colin's basement, we did I think it was 4 Officer Down songs with Colin, maybe 2 years before that. So I had worked, we didn't even call that work back then. Been in that studio with Colin before. And so it was, it was a familiar spot. But yeah, I think we took about 2 weeks maybe to track it. And while that was 18 years ago, I don't have distinct memories of that. I do remember the gang vocal aspect of that more than anything, just because it was hilarious. That was the first time we actually got like a full room of like, I don't know how many people came out, like 15, 20 people, and just, around them, 1 or 2 microphones, and just like,
actually yelling.
Yeah, can't live yesterday or whatever, it was a fun experience, but I guess things kind of soured between John Paul and Colin Hanson at some point after that, because a few months later we were supposed to record what would be our last record with Figure 4 there. And that, I guess they had a bit of a falling out. And so we just ended up doing it at John Paul's, which at that time was his newer place. We did the drums at Private Ear, which was at that time in a different location than it is now, and did the the guitars and vocals and whatever at his house. I kind of went over that real fast.
I
any questions you have about that, I'll try to remember.
Yeah, and I remember again, like when he brought it up, it just like hearing, it would have been one thing if it was just insert any other band, but the fact that it was in this hardcore sphere and seeing the the resume of all the stuff that he's worked on since then that has spanned multiple genres is really cool. So
he literally anything.
So mad shout out to JPP if you're listening. So we're gonna fast forward a bit. Comeback Kid has a very large catalog of records. You guys had a vocalist change in the mix, and other members that have different seasons of the Comeback Kid lifetime. And I've heard you talk about on other podcasts and in interviews on how the Comeback Kid sound isn't necessarily like restricted to just like, okay, we can only write riffs like this or songs like this. You guys kind of have your own thing going for ever since even like Wake the Dead and things like that. So was that always the game plan, or was it always just like, okay, like we're a hardcore band, but we are going to have these like melodic parts, we're going to have these really heavy parts? And is that always how you've been writing?
Yes, kind of. I think with this specific question, you might have, if we just go over the span of Comeback Kid, you'd probably have two different answers from Andrew and myself.
Sure.
I think so I'll speak from my angle. I don't want to misrepresent him. Um, but my angle has always been that I feel we should have some basic parameters to work within, as well as not limit ourselves to just being I don't know, like quote unquote hardcore band.
Sure.
Um, to us, just doing something following in the footsteps of specific bands and keeping it limited to that sound was sort of something limiting that we never wanted to do, and I don't think we did that. It is definitely easy to box Comeback Kid up into two different sounds. Like there's the Turn It Around, Wake the Dead era with Scott, and then Andrew. That's like just the vocals alone. There's an obvious difference. But I think even in just songwriting, song structure, once Wake the Dead, once we had that switch, I feel like even the way we were writing songs changed, not drastically, but noticeably. Like you can definitely tell a difference from broadcasting to the latest record. There's a darker sort of sound in the music that I don't think you'll hear as much of on the first two records.
Mhm.
So, we kind of have our parameters, but we're not going to be, tightly confined to them. If that makes any sense.
Definitely.
Because one of my things, and this is where I speak very personally, not for the band, but just for myself. One of my things personally, I never wanted to do was put out a record that sounded just way drastically different than anything else we had done. Because going back to when I was a teenager, there's one band in particular in my Christian metal days that had a very specific sound to me. And when their fourth record came out, it wasn't fast, it wasn't this, it wasn't that, and it was such a bummer to me. I was like, if I'm ever in a band, I never want to do that.
Mm.
And and I think we've been able to maintain that, because not every record is a huge departure from the last. They're always going to sound different. You're never going to hear Wake the Dead Part Two or Symptoms and Cures Part Two.
Right.
Um, but I think it's, yeah, sort of important to have that combination of, like, knowing who you are as a band, how your fans see you, but also don't limit it to, your most popular song or most popular record or whatever. Trying to replicate that or live in the glory days of that.
Right. Yeah, and I
Because
think
we all
like
know what the big song is.
right, right. Yeah, and I think like, I've talked with other people, different musicians in different bands, and they've, ultimately said like um having like writing music for yourself should always be the number one priority and the end goal. But, having if you are as a band you're wanting to make a switch or transition instead of making a hard, right turn, and then your fan base is going down and realizing you're way over here, having a little bit of like a branch into the next thing.
Right.
I've seen it where I know you guys have toured with a band like Hundredth in the past, and they were kind of like, okay, this is like a melodic hardcore band that I grew up on when I was first getting into it. And then when it went like full shoegazy and it was kind of like out of nowhere, that's at least for me when I dropped off, because I was like, oh, like when I think of this band, it's that split, and it's not even like a subgenre split of like, oh, it went melodic and then it went more thrashy. It was like full on genre splits. So,
Right. And
um,
that's the thing I will always try to do everything I can to avoid,
right.
because that is a huge bummer for me, and I know that's a huge bummer for other fans.
Yeah.
And I would just sort of add one thing to what you said,
Sure.
like where bands do that, and it's usually driven a f- by something that they've kind of gotten bored of it, or maybe see an opportunity to, like, latch on to some commercial success of some other band doing that or whatever. Sometimes it works. And if you're purely chasing the money, whatever, I get it, but I also don't get it. But I think it's important as a band to, realize your expiry date. Like, if you're not having fun anymore and you're just going through the motions and just shitting out records just because, that's what you've kind of come to get used to paying the bills or whatever, like if you're at that level, like, just for the fans' sake, like, get out, like, it sucks. Like,
Yeah, or
and if there's another style of music, just start a new band. I mean,
yeah,
that's side projects. I feel are so important for people in bands because there's less of a chance of your sound getting messed with if you need that outlet to get that shoegazer sound out, or if you need to get that like folksy sort of thing out of your system. It's not a bad thing to write that kind of music, but if it's affecting, this is obviously very, all kinds of opinions come into play. But my
sure,
personal
yeah,
opinion is if it's starting to like, like a favorite band of mine, like Propaganda, like to me they're a huge inspiration, and they changed their sound, but I felt like in a cool way. Like when, for me, a pivotal record was Supporting Cast, and when that came out, I was blown away. I was like, wow. Like for most bands that have a catalog that spans the length of time that they have, usually you get kind of more disappointed as the records go on. When that one came out, I was like, this is their best record. And I still feel like that today. Like when that came out, I was like, wow, this is heavier, but not in a way that, kind of takes away from that old Propaganda sound. I felt like there was still that old prop there, but like it kind of, there was something that grew out of that into a pretty cool thing.
yeah, yeah,
I just
and
yeah,
like
for a while.
making meaningful and fulfilling music like takes time. It's not just like a some songs are like, yeah, we wrote this in a day, but like mapping that transition of like having a little bit of a connection from the last release and things like that, like that should all be well thought out. And
For
I
sure.
want to echo what you said. Like if Hundredth was not making any like new music on the melodic hardcore side, but all those guys had a side project that had all that stuff, I would not be probably bringing them up. I would probably just wouldn't be talking about their band, and I'm sure. But I think like you said, and we're not coming on here to like blast them and say they're chasing
No,
their
no, no.
money, but
And just for the record, we actually never did tour with them. I don't think we've ever done even a festival with them. I've never seen them.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
Maybe I just assumed that because you guys are kind of in the same
for sure.
sphere,
Yeah.
but
No, and that happens with a lot of bands where it's like, we just kind of, say like Power Trip. Like that's a band that now that it's over, it's like, how did we never do anything with them?
mhm.
But I digress again.
Yeah. So you know, it's recently I've been having a couple interviews with people that I really look up to in pretty large and successful bands. But from your point of view, and like you said, you can't really speak on behalf of the band. And if anyone else in Comeback wants to come on the podcast, the invitation is open. But
Yeah, get Andrew because he'll probably he'll probably disagree with a lot of what I said. But we still
um,
love each other. We have the weirdest relationship.
Yeah. But in your opinion, over the entire time that, I guess like you said 2000, so it's almost like 20 years.
It is.
Um,
This is our big 20-year anniversary tour year.
yeah.
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 Anyways,
But with that being said, like, do you think that there was kind of like a pivot? Like, what do you think is the biggest springboard moment for Comeback Kid? Whether it was a song, a music video, an album, a change of how you guys were doing things. What in your opinion was like, yep, that was the moment that just like shot it to that like, uncontrollable level.
I think there were two steps to it. I think turn it around, put us on, the map and on a level that I don't think any of us thought we did. We hit the ground running. That
Sure.
record came out. We were just like, oh wow, we're getting offers from like all the bands we love, like to do tours. So that there's no question that was, a huge step that usually gets overshadowed by the second step, which was Wake the Dead.
Mhm.
And that, of course, we signed a face down with a 2 album contract. Um, but they were kind enough to, let us out of that, or they made a deal. It was a different kind of way of getting out of a contract onto a different record label, but because Jason from Facedown, he had his own band on Victory as well with albums to go, so there was kind of like a little
Oh,
backroom
I
deal
see.
they did to work it out. Anyway, so we moved from Facedown to Victory. There was never any hard feelings with Facedown at all. It was never about that. It was just about getting more exposure. Slash, we still to this day 20 years later can't shake the Christian label. Our band was never a Christian band. Yes, there were Christian members in it, there aren't now, but that was never something that we felt we wanted or benefited us or anything like that. So anyways, we moved to Victory, and yeah, just that whole thing just helped get us on to that next level. And then obviously Wake the Dead to this day is still by far our biggest song. Like if you look from afar, we look like a one hit wonder band.
Yeah, well, definitely not. There's a multitude of bangers from every record, in my opinion. Y- to hit on "Wake the Dead" because everyone knows every lyric to that song who's listening to this. Um, when I find it interesting just the placement of where that is in the record. It's very very early on, and I find it funny sometimes when you release music, you don't anticipate when certain songs are going to be the hit song or the one that people share around the most. So like, did you guys think it was like, yeah, this song's pretty catchy, kind of like upbeat, but you had no idea that it would like essentially be an anthem for the band?
Um, that's also a two-step thing. I think when we were writing the song, we knew this sounds funny to say, but I still remember tinkering with components of that, like as a band, like just components of it. And I just remember having the feeling that this song's going to make the record. Um, it sounds absolutely hilarious to say, and I like the opening riff. Um, I had a slightly different idea, like because Andrew brought that to the table, and I had a slightly different idea to put after that. Thank God. I I, oh, who knows? It would have been bigger. No, but but I just remember like the feeling was like this is clearly a song that's going to make the record because we had different riffs and different ideas, and as many bands do, it's like you try to pile up as much as of usable material as you can, and then whittle it down to the stuff that's going to be the good stuff that you're going to put on the record. So that was the initial feeling, like going to make the record. Went in, recorded it. It was a little bit of a different. It came out way differently vocally than I thought,
Okay.
because like Scott, he's definitely not. He wasn't a singer like da 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 da. Like he had his yell, but he wasn't a singer.
Right.
And so I think working with Bill Stevenson on that, I think was one of the secret ingredients on that because Bill's got a really good sense of melody, and he was able to pull some things out of Scott that, no offense to Scott, but pull some things out of him that we didn't know possible.
Hmm.
And I
That's
think
really
that
interesting.
helped take it to the next level. And but still, at the time, not thinking this was going to be like the song we'd be remembered for or known. I think we got more of that feeling when it was mixing time, and we're back. Everything's tracked, and then Jason Livermore. Um, he was doing the mix. Bill Stevenson coming into the room with him every now and then, and them talking about it, and us just kind of waiting on the outside. And they would just every few hours bring us in to listen to what they had, and then we'd kind of critique it. And then if there are quick changes, they do them on the fly. If things took a little longer, same thing. Go out of the room, they'd work on it. We'd go
Yeah.
back in. And I just remember hearing "Wake the Dead." Like there was kind of silence in the room. It was like, this song's gonna be huge.
Yeah.
Like and I remember having that feeling, and not even realizing that it would get bigger than I thought. But I just thought, we're going to be, seen as like this song's going to be, you know, on that level of, good hardcore songs at that time, not realizing that it was going to be even bigger than we had thought at that time. So yeah.
Yeah. That is very cool. Even just to hear on the producer side where yeah, like Scott's vocals are very like if even if someone screams, there's still a note that's hidden that's hit on that piano. But yeah, he would kind of be on the same thing, but even on that chorus there's a little bit of like
Yeah.
like there is some changes there. So that's very very
There are,
cool.
and I
Very
think
cool to
it's
hear.
very safe to say that Bill was, able to really pull that out.
Definitely.
He's that's his department. He's because when we did the recording there, Jason Livermore did the guitar tracks and the drum tracks. Bill did the bass and the vocals, and yeah, like from what we had demoed and worked on, vocally, you would find the by far the biggest change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very very cool to hear. Just it. I didn't have this written down, but talking since we're talking about the song, the music video that you guys did, um, it was in this venue and everyone's going crazy. And it's kind of like you guys are circled around. I found out through my friend. Shout out to Chris Craker. from the Dolphin Striker days. He had told me that that venue was in Osborne Village, and it was where the, I guess it's not there anymore, but it was where American Apparel was for the
Yeah, and
longest
now I
time.
think it's Planet Fitness. I think.
Oh, okay. I'm so out of the Winnipeg loop because I haven't been there in such a long time. But, ever since he told me that, anytime I'd pass there, even when it was vacant, I was like, man, hardcore shows, like people were pitting in like these different aisles and stuff like that.
It was sick. It was sick.
Yeah. So, you know, talked a lot about Comeback Kid. I would be remiss to not ask like what you guys have in the works kind of during this weird time of not being able to tour as much as you guys do. I know you guys have done a couple covers and some singles, but is there something, EP album that you can
Album.
album? Cool.
Album. Yeah. I can't really give you any details as far as like when and all that. All I can say is we're working on it. In this very room where I'm sitting, I got my pedal board and my guitars and a garage band things, and I know the other guys are doing the same. We've had one session where Stu, Andrew, and myself, like we all live in different cities. I'm the only one left here in Winnipeg. Andrew's in Toronto, and the other three are in Vancouver. But Andrew, Stu, and myself, we got together here a few months ago and went over stuff that we have been working on because our process is generally, Andrew and myself, and now Stu's a newer member, but him as well, we'll just write on our own and then kind of bring the ideas in to the band to work out. I know bands often just write in the room, like somebody's got a riff and they kind of go with that. We kind of try to, and not that we have to, we don't have any rules, but at least on my end, and others end too, but we put the whole song together the way we see it and then bring it together, grind it out, and then usually end up breaking it right down again and using parts for other parts and whatever spare parts. But yeah, so that's the process. We had one of those sessions. We have another one coming up. This whole COVID thing is really messing with us, but we're just trying to do our best. I think our local public health official kind of says it the way that I agree with. We have to learn to live with the virus. And while we take, just the common sense approach that we all should be, we shouldn't be shutting down completely. And so we're kind of taking that approach where it's like, let's do everything the way we should, but let's not let this, keep us from making new music.
Yeah.
We just want to do that, smartly. So we're gonna have another get together with the full band, and we've tweaked more songs, and there's probably going to be a few new ones in the mix that we need to work on. So yeah, we're still at it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have a goal of recording early next year, but nothing's set in stone because this whole thing is weird. So
Definitely. Yeah.
like it's set in temporary stone, like as much as you can, because
Yeah.
like even airlines now are giving you the option of better options of canceling without penalties and all that. So everything's just, it is what it is. So you gotta, yeah, we're just playing the best we can.
Yeah. And that actually is a great transition into one question I had here. Comeback Kid. I think, if anyone had to say it is, oh yeah, that's a hardcore band from Winnipeg. But like you were saying, you're actually the only member who's still within the 204 area code, and a
Yeah.
lot of the other guys are within, east and west. So, nowadays it's a lot easier for bands to do that like long distance band practice songwriting and getting together to jam when a tour is coming up or recording cycle is in the works. So talk to me about like how often are you guys like chatting and like getting together in like a normal world where you would be hitting the road. I'm guessing everyone's like, if you guys were going to like Indonesia or something, like you're not all coming to Winnipeg and then going, you're probably all just meeting up there.
Yeah, we literally just show up together the day before wherever we're going to be. So if our tour starts in Philadelphia or Indonesia, which our last tour was supposed to, that we had to cancel in March, yeah, we literally just fly there, hope that we like in that case it would have been interesting because that was a festival, so we wouldn't have had probably time to do a proper sound check, maybe just a quick line check. But
Mhm.
especially if we're starting a tour, and like if we're doing a tour in Europe, wherever it starts, we'll usually have ample time to do a lengthy sound check where we can just work through any kinks that we might have. But um, we definitely don't play all of our songs. We have our set list or our playable list, which we comprise our set list from,
Yeah.
and yeah, usually we've done this enough that we know the songs, we know our parts. Everybody, it's kind of on everybody just to make sure before you leave home to just go through the songs a few times because especially now that this is the most time I've ever had off in my life from playing a show. Um, there's going to be parts where you're just like, oh, I just completely brain farted there. It's like, of course I go into that part, or
Yeah.
these things are going to happen, right? So then they happen on those tours. We have shorter breaks too. So yeah, we usually just have a quick, not quick, but a sound check, and then go over what we think we need to.
Yeah.
Maybe talk about some subtle changes that we're going to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
majority of the
pretty straightforward.
practicing is like, on the person, and then, it's kind of muscle memory a lot of the time when you're playing a show. I'm never thinking about, okay, I go from this, you know, you know, bell ride part into this two step. It just kind of happens, and
Right.
a way to allow that to happen is just being tight on your end of things.
Exactly.
So we're gonna kind of hard transition here on topics. So as I mentioned, um, you you're pretty open and public about being vegan. Your SG in the background has like a vegan sticker that has been there for God knows how long.
I actually
Um,
have two SGs
oh, I
that have
see.
one of them's in Europe, which I just keep there. This one stays home. So that's how dorky I am.
Yeah, is it the same sticker, same placement? Tried to line it up the
Same
same.
placement, slightly different sticker.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a sticker that you had to get like custom made, or is there a specific sticker company you
Oh,
want to plug?
this is so dorky. I can't believe we're talking about this. No, my friend Brooke Duncan, who used to do merch for us, and she used to uh, do all of our buttons, make them. She also started doing stickers, and I just got her to whip me up a few, and yeah, I put them on one of my guitars, and then I don't know, maybe 6 7 years ago, we were in at a festival in Germany, and there's like this sticker printing company that was set up backstage at one of these massive like metal festivals, and they were just like, you can get whatever you want, uh, you know, made up as a sticker. Just give
Oh,
our
okay.
give our company a little like shout out online or something like that. So I was like, I'm gonna get my. Oh no, this would have been like 4 years ago because this would have been the year that my son was born. Because I remember I got his. Maybe it's this guitar too. Yeah, it is. So I got they maybe that I don't know if that's showing up
Yeah,
backwards,
yeah.
but it's
No,
Jack
you're
Winter.
good.
So that's my son. So I got them to make me a sticker for the back, and then put a vegan one there. This guitar used to be the one that stayed in Europe, and I brought it home to get new pickups put in. So I just swapped them. But yeah, that's usually my European one because I remember that's the only one that's got my son's name on it. But anyways, yeah, they both got it. But I digress once again. Veganism.
No, I'm glad we went down the little rabbit hole as far as the Jeremy Hiebert sticker collection. But just going back to it, obviously should just not start at the beginning, but you can kind of tell me like has and maybe this is something that we can hit on just as we were talking about before, as far as like being Mennonite, like having the sausage and mashed potatoes, like is that being a staple food? Like when did veganism kind of like, or just the idea of being vegan kind of enter into your life, and how has that just cemented over the course of playing music and things like that?
Well, just to do a quick history, I was very anti-vegan, I would say in the 90s.
Oh, okay.
I remember a girlfriend that I had, she was vegan when we started dating. And one of my friends, who I later was a roommate of, he was, I also played in a local band with him. He was very vegan at the time. And it used to just drive me up a wall and annoy me. And I didn't get it. Then anyway, I started doing more touring in the 2000s, and then I guess just being around it more just started rubbing off on me. PETA was pretty active, like at shows, handing out flyers and information, having video things set up at shows or whatever. So I started. I remember specifically this one tour that we did with Rise Against in 2007. They were at. It was like a 3 month long tour, but they were at every show, just like getting people to sign a petition. I can't remember what it was for, but I just remember making friends with them. And at the time, I was vegetarian. I made a switch. I'm probably skipping my timeline here, but I just remember that was sort of not a cementing moment, but it was an influential moment where I was just having open conversations with these people every day. Just talking, and basically, I got to the point where I was just like, this makes sense. This totally makes sense. Like, why would I want to eat the bodies of these animals that are mostly living in horrible conditions? And yeah, just to back up a little further, I went vegetarian in 2005, where I literally woke up one morning and said, I'm not going to eat meat today. And went through the whole day without eating meat. And then the next day I was like, I'm never going to eat meat again. So going vegan, just as someone, I think it was Chris Hanna who said before, it's just taking it to its natural conclusion, right? Like, where you cut out the meat, but it's also like a lot of the suffering happens, in the egg and dairy industry as well. So if you can cut that out, you're helping out even more. And yeah, so I just kind of was influenced by a lot of that in the hardcore music world, because in the 90s that was uh I don't know if an integral component of punk and hardcore, but it was always there. And so I was always around it, disagreed with it at first, and then my stubborn brain slowly got educated. And yeah, I made the full switch in 2007. So yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting to hear because I think majority of the people that I know that have these, ways of life or things that they stand behind is through music, like hearing the bands talk about certain things, and being vegan and straight edge are kind of like their own separate things, but they do have a lot of those things where it's like just being around people that don't drink that can rub off of you if you're touring with that band all the time. Same thing if someone's vegan, it's like, well, I can't go to Chick-fil-A to eat. I like they don't have a vegan thing, and then you're like, okay, so just out of respect, you're going to the vegan shop, and you're like, oh, this burger is really good, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something I wanted to ask is, as I've been vegetarian for a while, and I guess like my decision to do that was, I think, a 50-50 of like, yeah, like I morally feel better about like not eating an animal that was slaughtered, so for my, to be on my plate, but also on the fact that like, from a health standpoint, I have Crohn's disease, so I was like, I'm gonna try like cutting out like red meat and chicken and things like that to see if that helps with inflammation and things like that.
Right.
So for you, from what I've seen, a lot of people will jump, like kind of try to go zero to hero and do the vegan thing right away, but either they'll stop doing that, or the junk food vegan has been a conversation as well. So how have you, like, you've been vegan for a long time, it sounds like, so how did you kind of like find those supplements, find the things that were like, okay, this works for me, this doesn't, and what's kind of like the biggest pieces of advice that you could share for the folks at home here?
Um, I think the one thing that helped me the most was just, see, I never came from it from the health angle. While I do agree that there's definitely benefits, nutrition wise, health wise, all that. For me, it was always about the animals. Like, I didn't like the way that they're treated. Just that whole industry is what truly made me make the switch. I consider the personal benefits icing on the cake.
Mhm.
Um, but I think just making that switch just gave me an interest in life that I never had before. Like, I never really, yeah, I made my own food, but I got into cooking when I became vegan, because um, you always hear about these nutritional deficits that you can have, which are largely overblown, but you do need to supplement B12. It's good to make sure that you've got your essential fatty acids like your omegas and whatever. There's vitamin D. Like there's definitely things that it's good to educate yourself on. But I do think the scare tactics that some of the people who are really opposed to it, I think they're far overblown. um but yeah, it was mostly just like out of the horror of the industry. Maybe I'm embellishing that a bit, but it came this sort of desire to you know learn how to you know keep myself healthy, because I didn't want to be one of these you know nutritionally compromised vegans.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a weird balance like with my kind of journey with this like you were saying, like going from vegetarian to vegan is kind of like the natural conclusion of like fully like saying no to a lot of the oppression to these animals, not just being like, oh, like it doesn't, you didn't die, but like getting the eggs and things like that, like is those things are tied together, just naturally. So yeah, I think it is interesting to like, not feel like you have to know everything as soon as you make the switch, like taking small steps to like, okay, I'm not, you know, I've had this conversation with a lot of people where it's like, I think it's far more likely that, there might be more people that, by just, word of mouth or rubbing off, like you were saying, become vegan or vegetarian over time. But I think it's almost like more likely for our society to just eat less meat overall versus everyone's just going full left field to it. But a lot of people don't. They think they have to be like, it's a black or white, and I think there's a lot of gray area to be like, instead of having meat every meal, you could just have it once a week, and
Right.
those are still great steps towards changing and taking down some of those industries.
Yeah, and I think some of those things are probably starting to change up top. Like the Canada, I don't know the technical term, but Canada's their health food guidelines or whatever, they changed quite a bit. Like last year when they intro, I think it was last year, maybe it was more than that ago. But like the difference was quite stark from what it used to be. Just kind of like an emphasis on plant-based foods. And I think the more that happens, and I think the other very important component, and this is the one that drives me up a wall, is how food gets subsidized. Um, I am so in disagreement with subsidizing like animal agriculture, because I feel for the farmers that suffer during economic downturns or whatever. But I just feel like we're propping up an industry that, well, personally shouldn't exist. But like it's like when people say, well, veganism is so expensive, well, it's like, well, it's because a lot of this is subsidized and shouldn't be. There's like when you see a McDonald's hamburger that is 79 cents or whatever you find on a dollar menu, and then you have like an organic apple or an organic piece of fruit, vegetable, that's more. Like the thing just literally grows, but that costs more. And this multi-layered thing that has so many different ingredients is cheaper. Something's wrong. And so that drives me up a wall. So I think if there's a shift up top with that, I think you're going to see a huge um, like change in society when it comes to where they get their food and how they view it.
Yeah. Yeah, and just off of that point, like meat, like I've seen where, in the grocery of our household, like we don't buy meat, and like I look at meat prices half the time and I'm like, man, like I'm saving a lot of money to not do Thanksgiving turkey dinner or like, the crazy ham and whatever. Just like, yeah, I'm putting those dollars into like, I don't know, I'm getting like my kidney beans for like
Yeah, I mean,
my
you
chilies
don't
and
have
stuff.
to eat all the meat analogs that are so expensive, like the vegan stuff. Like, if you like, you're actually going to be healthier if you like really go down that plant-based nutrition rabbit hole, because a lot of the things that are good for you are not crazy expensive, like lentils, beans, legumes, like, just that protein source alone. If you can just adjust, those things, and if your palate allows you to, I know some people hate that, but most people are down with that, and like that's not expensive.
Yeah. Maybe the last question that I can ask on this topic, do you have a go-to vegan meal that you make at home, like far more than the other meals, or what's your like guilty pleasure vegan meal of choice?
Hmm. I used to cook I used to be a lot more what do you call it? Creative, or I'd try a few more things, but now when you have kids, you kind of you know cater
Whittle it.
try to cater a little more to what they want,
Yeah.
or what they'll eat. Um, so I don't know, like I'll make anything. Like, I mean, I guess the easier ones, like a tofu scramble, for instance, that's still one of my all time. I don't make it as much as I should, because like our 4 year old, he's all about it,
Mhm.
and they're so easy to do, and they're so versatile because you can literally put whatever you want in there. If you just want it, like if you don't like the vegetables, whatever, you can totally just make a tofu scramble. But we love to add things. We love to, get always garlic and onions in there, and whatever vegetables you have on hand,
Yeah.
whether peppers or sun dried tomatoes or black beans, kale. Those things are all fine to put in there. And not only is it good for you, it's like we all enjoy eating that too. I remember that was one of my favorite things to eat when we'd stop at those cool little vegan cafes on tour. It's like it was in the morning and we were there for brunch. Hell yeah, I'm getting the tofu scramble.
Yeah, yeah, and doing like the garlic and onions and all that like really takes the flavor, like takes you to the next station in Flavor Town. So,
Yeah, it
um,
can be boring, but only if you are boring about it.
yeah, yeah. And maybe that's a great segue into the next thing I want to ask. You've talked in interviews about how you're like the band dad as being one of the older guys, but you're an actual dad as well. You have two kids,
Yeah,
4 and a 1 year old.
4 and 1. Yeah, well,
Gotcha.
they'll both be stepping up a year in December and January, so we're getting close to 2 and 5.
Gotcha. So, this is, a pretty interesting question. As far as like raising your kids with having, not a, if once your 4 year old is going to school and he has like bring your dad to work day and he's like, yeah, I write riffs that people fight each other to, versus like the firefighters and whatnot of the other class. How have you thought about, navigating and raising your child with like, do I put on some turn it around when he's going to sleep and just have it like going in his head. It sounds like your household is a vegan, even
Yeah,
for your kids as well. So talk to me about how you have your beliefs and whatnot, but how do you, you know, where do you decide on how to push and let them discover themselves as
right.
well?
Well, I think everything's with age. I'm not a parental expert, but my opinion is like the younger they are, the more influence you're going to have over them, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like, just stick to the basics. Like what's good, what's try. Yeah, just focus on positive stuff. What you feel is like. It's also one of those things as a parent where I think you always have to realize that you're not always going to be right. So maybe you're going to introduce maybe just a opinion is you're biased for whatever reason, whether it's your social bubble, or how you grew up, or whatever, right? So like, am I going to be disappointed if my kids don't get into hardcore? No, but I'm their dad, so they're going to be exposed to that to some degree, right?
Sure.
And that, I think that's totally fine and great. The next kid's mom or dad is going to be a jazz musician, and they're going to be exposed to a ton of that. So neither of us is right or wrong. It's just part of who we are, right? So a lot of that is going to rub off. But then when it comes into like your moral dilemmas and whatnot, I think it's important to, like, for me, veganism is a question of it does become a moral dilemma at some point. And so I think for me as a parent, it's important to um, at a young age raise them in the way that I think is the right way to do it. And the tough part for me as a parent is realizing that we might come to a crossroads when they're in their teenagers where they're gonna, ask some tough questions about that. And, I have to look at, my upbringing because, I was raised very religiously, right? And at some point, I'm sure my parents realized that, sure, I'm going to church, I'm going to Sunday school, I'm doing this, that, going to all the youth groups and this and that. But at some point, our kid's going to question this and maybe in a big way.
Mm.
And when you believe that someone's going to hell if they're no longer a Christian, that's going to keep you up at night, right?
Yeah.
So that's something my parents, they would have raised me the way that they felt was the right thing to do because they don't want me to go to hell. But at some point, they probably realize that I'm going to question it, and much to their fears, I made one of their fears come real because I left the faith, right?
Mhm.
And that's in my head because I'm raising, or I shouldn't say I'm raising, me along with my partner, we're raising our kids in a way that we feel is, the right way, the best that we can do, knowing what we know. But there are also going to be, outside influences that can influence them and their ways of thinking. So just to trying to sort out like what you leave alone and what you need to push back on, whether it's, you know, like when it comes to politics or just how we view like race and this and that, there's going to be some bad outside influences that creep in. So it's like you kind of have to pick your battle sometimes. This is something where we have to push back strongly, like, no, what you heard from your friend, that is wrong, and this is why.
Yeah.
Um, and then in other areas, it's like you have to be a little softer, and they're going to figure out their own path, and it can be a bit overwhelming. I think as a parent, just knowing that that's all still ahead,
Yeah.
and not having all the answers. You want to do your best, but you have to realize that I'm only human. I'm not going to have all the answers, but I want to do the best that I can based on my life experiences because that's all I have. That's literally all I have. Like,
Yeah.
who's the expert? There's a lot of experts out there. Which ones do you listen to and which ones do you not?
Yeah.
That's tough.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think like there's a plethora of like parenting books out there, but like there is never a one size fits all like strategy. Like there's so many different aspects, and I don't have kids myself, but like I know that looking at you know my my grandpa or my dad never really had this want or desire to be involved in music or things like that, but like I'm the oddity, so there's always things that come into play that change the trajectory of things. And
Oh yeah,
if
there's always going to be an oddball, in the family. Like there's going to be the black sheeps.
Yeah, but I like what you said as far as like there are certain things where it's definitely not like if one of your kids is like, "Hey dad, this is what I'm listening to," like this is not it. But like you're not going to like, "Okay, no, you have to burn this record at the like
Yeah.
or stomp it." But yeah, there's certain things where you need to be a little bit more critical on where someone comes back and someone said something to them at school and you're like, okay, like it's time to go into dad mode and save the day here. So
We just want to do the best that we can.
yeah. So Jeremy, we're kind of getting towards the end of the conversation here. A couple more questions for you, and then we'll start
Yeah.
to wrap it up. Obviously, you brought it up as far as we're going to transition back into the hardcore realm, but Figure Four is a band that you had mentioned. One of those bands that I think a lot of people in the hardcore space have always liked. Gotten their hardcore Bibles and prayed to, as far as like, will there ever be something that comes of Figure Four? So I'm asking on behalf of those people if there's ever been thoughts, any desire to do something, whether it was like a reunion or something like that. Obviously, you're not going to make any promises here on the podcast, but obviously, I'm just trying to speak for the masses here.
Yeah, no, I've been asked this question a few times,
Yeah,
and
I'm sure you're
gen-
like, oh,
I,
this
I
is
just
the thousandth.
generally answer it the same. Where my again going, I don't want to represent the band per se when I answer this. I'm representing me. I'd be happy to. I don't want to tour again with Figure Four, but I definitely would love to do at least one or two more shows where we can say a proper goodbye. And I don't think we have a if you'd ask other members, they might give you varying answers that would be kind of like that, and then some maybe less more like that or less like that. So it's 100% not out of the realm of possibilities, but it's also not a thing that's for sure going to happen.
Right.
It's the like timing has to be right. Everybody has to be on the same page.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's definitely not ruled out, but it's definitely not for sure going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like thinking about the Have Heart release it or reunions that happened, kind of like just I guess that was last year. Now I'm thinking about it.
Could it seems like forever ago, but that
But
was
yeah,
was
it's like
different life.
what month is it?
Yeah.
But yeah, like when that band announced that they were doing that, it was so like out of nowhere, and I'm sure everyone in their close circles were like, "Yo, when are you gonna get
Yeah,
together? When are you gonna
for
do
sure.
this?" So
I'm sure Bane's under that right now.
oh, I'm sure, and I'm sure they're yeah. I think if there's two Canadian bands that are absolute must, like I will kill future Spencer if he misses these reunions or tries to not do his best to try and capture them. Is doing something Figure Four related or means as well. So whatever comes first, I'll be there
Yeah.
regardless.
Well, you know it's got my vote, so
Okay, well, we got one down. I'm just kidding. So to wrap up, Jeremy, the last question that I ask all of my guests is a favorite Mosh story that you would like to share with us off the top of your head. So it doesn't necessarily need to be something that happened at a Comeback Kids show or something that happened to you. Just whatever's top of mind for you is how we kind of end things here.
favorite mosh story,
Yeah.
like where I was caught in the mosh.
It literally could be whatever. It could be like I was side stage watching this band in this year and saw this and it just stuck with me forever. Like whatever's the first, or if you got multiple stories, whatever you want.
Well, my pit days are over, but I remember this would have been on a Figure Four tour.
Sure.
Um, just you know, cut our teeth here in Winnipeg, and yeah, there was moshing, but I didn't realize how hard people moshed in the States until, I mean, I saw it, but I felt it one time. Uh, we were in Erie, and I can't remember the bill, but I just remember I was at the edge of the pit, for whoever was playing, and I was about to step in, and just this arm just caught me like right here, and I just like it shook me, like I was just like what, like I was, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think since that day, that there might have been one or two times that I would have gone in after that, but that was just like, nah, I'm too old for this. I think I was maybe like 20, I don't know, 24, 25 at the time, but yeah, I was like, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
good.
The Jeremy Hiebert moshing is few and far between from that moment
Oh
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not gonna see it now.
Yeah. Well, dude, this has been a blast. Honestly, it's come full circle as far as, when I was first starting this podcast of like, people I'd like to interview that hit on hardcore, but then things outside of the realm and bridging them between. So appreciate you giving me an hour of your time. Is there
More than
anything
happy to
that
do it.
you want to shout out? Places that you want to send people after this episode ends? The floor is yours for whatever you want to share.
Yeah, I guess mainly just keep your ear to the ground for when that new record's gonna come out. Like we are talking about dates, but I definitely don't want to say anything because this is the weirdest time of life, and
Right.
a lot of things that seem like they're set in stone are not set in stone. So yeah, just keep your ear to the ground with for that. I'm pretty boring on social media, but you can find me just whatever, Instagram, Twitter. I say some stupid things. Yeah.
Yeah, that will all be in the description in the show notes. But again, Jeremy, this has been a great conversation, and thanks again for coming on the podcast and jamming with
Hey,
me.
happy to do it. Thanks for having me.